Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mortgage Heroes Weekly Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Brian.
I'm Will.
So today, we need to talk about what happened last week on the internet regarding Airbnb. There was a huge scuffle regarding some data that came out that someone was sharing about a massive collapse happening in Airbnb. But then there was the rebuttal, tons of comments, and people were talking about maybe it's actually not what it's being portrayed as. But then there's data to support kind of both arguments. So let's talk about, first of all, what happened, and then let's discuss what we think is actually the real story.
Well, what happened is TikTokers. TikTokers are ruling the world here, just giving a lot of information that's not even accurate at times, you know? And they always say, do your due diligence on researching.
Yeah, so that is actually part of the story right out of the gate, is not everything on the internet is true. Even though some things, the data might look true, sometimes the data can be skewed.
Very manipulated. No, I guess a viral tweet went out crazy this past week, and it said that Airbnb is about to basically go bust. So that's exactly what everybody's just, headline after headline, just saying, hey, the market's going to crash, the market's going to crash. But then again, like everybody likes to put their own twist on it, add their own flavor. But let's get right into see what the real truth realities of this is.
Scary.
So the question I have is there some truth to that, even if it may be different location wise? Is there some truth to there being maybe collapse is too hard of a word. Is there some truth to say that maybe in some parts of the country there has been a softening of reservation rates and total money in, because it looks like that is true, but very selectively based on city?
Well, we got to compare, guys. 2020 put us COVID.
Right.
A lot of people were going into more remote areas. Mm-hmm. So when they went over there, a lot of people said, hey, let's Airbnb. So, they bought a home over there saying, I don't have to go to work. I'm going to buy a second home.
Yeah.
So that's a big key thing. 2021, they started kind of opening the doors. 22, the doors were open. So it's very hard to really tell how the Airbnb is going bust, right? When 2022 was a phenomenal year for a lot of businesses.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point that I think retroactively we look back historically, we're going to say, people chose the Airbnb over a hotel, which maybe the hotel could not even have had people, or I remember seeing rules where it was like, oh, you can't even rent rooms that are next to each other, even though they're separated by walls and doors. But so the Airbnb kind of move in that direction, kind of, I think, opened up, along with some cheap money along the way, the opportunity and the expansion of Airbnb and people looking for a private place that was their own, that was only shared by them, in order to have some vacation quote unquote extended staycation somewhere else.
So you brought up a really good point when you mentioned COVID, and I feel throughout COVID there was such a skew of numbers where everything was overinflated or everything was not as accurate because of the fact that it was very artificial. Mm-hmm. The Fed had a huge role in that, basically prompting up the economy these past 2 years.
Pretty money.
And I just feel now, when all this information is coming out, it's just coming back down to normal levels, and everybody's just going crazy based off the last levels of these past 2 years, which were basically numbers we've never seen in years, rates as low as we probably will never see again. And I just feel that a lot of people take everything until whenever it's going high,
That's
or
right.
low drastically. It's like, oh, it's bad. But in reality, it's probably just coming back down to levels that are either normal or just above what, an average Airbnb business should be.
Well, so let's talk about that, because some of the cities that were mentioned in this were San Antonio, Nashville, Denver, New Orleans, Seattle, Orlando, just to name a couple of them real quick, that are kind of like more known. There's some really small towns I've never even heard of before. But here's the question. So the implication of this tweet you're talking about is forced selling going to happen? But I think that my personal opinion is forced selling of these places is a condition of how they're held and who they're held by.
Absolutely.
And for what purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that can be overlooked very easily in any sort of situation like this, where maybe an argument from one side's being pitched and then there's a lot of rebuttal. This really does come down to the individual owners, just like we talk about with residential real estate. Whether you're going to buy or sell in this market or refinance in this market, that has to do with what your situation and circumstances are.
Correct.
Not the general nationwide averages or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, but with COVID, it brought a lot of people more remote areas.
Yeah.
I'm sure now people bought them for second homes. So we got to understand a lot of these people, they can keep the upkeep of the property because that's where their intention was to live in it. Mm-hmm. And now, hey, when I go back home, because I have to work, it's telling me I got to go back to work, COVID's over, they Airbnb their second home.
Right.
But they're able to sustain that.
Yeah.
There's other people that didn't have that luxury.
Right.
They're trying to get in it now when the prices are higher and the interest rates are much higher. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge difference there, you know?
What I'm curious to see is like this, the cities that basically are, I don't know about some cities out of Tennessee or like random, like, I'm sorry, I don't know, never heard of those cities before, but they're down 50%, right? Well, how quickly did they go up when, Airbnb was going crazy,
Good point.
How popular or how desirable was that destination previous to, having the cheap money, previous to being able to have a lucrative investment in an area where it's upcoming, but before that, what was the growth of that city, and I think that brings up a good point in these numbers.
Absolutely.
Drastically falling down.
And this also, I'm going to bring out the nerd real quick. This also brings up the math part of me, because let's use this example. So let's say someone was making $2,000 a month on Airbnb, and you say it had a 200% increase.
Wow.
Then that would be bringing $4,000 a month.
Right.
Well, or 100, basically 100% more, right?
Yeah,
Let's say it increases to $4,000 a month. Well, what's 50% of 4,000, guys?
2,000.
It's 2,000.
Yeah.
So on one side of it, you go, oh my gosh, 50% decline. You're like, well, but from where?
Yeah.
So I think that's completely perspective related. And again, if you're holding it and it's like a second home, or you're not relying on it for income, then you're probably not in trouble.
Yeah.
It may be the people that are holding this that are or maybe they're over leveraged. I mean, we have seen that in real estate before, where people were over leveraged, too many homes, too many high volumes, little money down, high mortgage payments. Maybe those are the ones that are sucking wind. Yeah. But I don't think that's the case everywhere. But also, I will say, like, combating it with current housing data that is residential related also it conflates the issue. It confuses it, because we're hearing, I mean, I was reading some of this and it's talking about how, home prices rose here, and then the home builder sentiment is this and that. I'm like, that none of that even matters. But it's like getting tossed in the conversation. You're like, those things aren't even related.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, why do we bring this up, guys?
It's housing. I mean, it's what's happening and the conversations that are being stirred up. But I think bringing some perspective to it is especially important for our audience. But even as professionals, and this is good for everyone listening. Even as professionals, you need to know we talk about these things.
Yes.
You need to know we talk about these things, because we kick it around and we don't have the same perspective. We don't share the same opinion. But even just in these conversations, ad hoc, when they just happen in the moment, this is where we can actually come to some sort of conclusion of what do we actually think is happening here.
Yeah.
So that when you ask us questions, we can give you a solid answer.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that stood out for me was the forced selling in certain markets. I believe that it is going to bring an influx of inventory in some certain states and some certain cities that do have these major collapse. That if the investor doesn't have the appetite to keep taking on that risk and keep taking on that loss, and I mean, of course he's going to have to sell, right? And I believe that Reventure app, that guy that came up with the article, with the numbers, he came up with in certain markets, there's even way more Airbnb listings that there is houses for sale.
And some of those
is
references.
completely ridiculous, because you're like,
Right.
oh wait, everybody's just turning into a landlord or just a renter nowadays.
But here's the other thing that they don't
that's where
announce
pushback
either,
comes
guys,
from.
Go ahead,
is
Brad.
there's a lot of homeowners that rent out that did because of the ADU.
Yeah.
They created a garage as an ADU, and so they're looking at it like, how do I make extra money? We represent a lot of those clients.
Yeah, of course.
And that's why we want to bring up this topic, so that not everybody stresses out. Everybody has a different experience, right? Some of our clients are like, that's the best thing I could have done. Was convert my garage into a 1-bedroom, home, and do an Airbnb or rent it out to insurance displaced clients. Because they had certain issues, and so instead of going to a hotel, they'd rather stay somewhere where they can have a pet. They they have a yard, etc.
Right.
Well, and I think if these properties do come to the market, I don't think they're going to collapse prices, number one, because they'd all have to come on in the same window at the same time in mass volume, which would be to the detriment to all the sellers trying to make top dollar. So they, not that they're going to have a meeting they don't even know each other, but not that they're going to have like some meeting, but okay, guys, we're going to list this week. We'll list 10 next week. But I don't think everyone's going to bum rush the door and list their home, number one. Number two, I have to think that in some of these areas where maybe there's more Airbnb homes than there are occupied homes, that has to be on a very case-by-case basis. That's not the case in a lot of dense urban cities like San Diego. That's not the case for even some of these mentioned, San Antonio, some of those other in Tennessee, like that might be better. That may be better stated for some of the more rural areas.
Yeah.
But those communities are going to probably push back. You're already seeing rules change where HOAs are saying, certain HOAs, you can't have short-term rentals here.
Yeah.
You see condominium complexes saying that. You're saying other private communities say, no, you cannot use your home for this purpose. So I think those, I'm not going to say the walls are closing in, but I think those rules are being in place, kind of bumpers at the bowling lane where, hey, we're we're not going to let you do this when this changes hands. I think those rule changes are going to change who these new next owners are going to be.
Yeah. Oh, girl, California, we're just going to add another fee right there. Oh, wait.
It's a yes, I can fee. Well, why not fee?
Yeah. Or we're just going to go on a, lottery system.
Yeah.
So just remember, when they say San Diego, it's not just all San Diego. You have your cities of Chula Vista where we don't practice the lottery system.
That's what I was going to say that I saw when I was researching some of the numbers in San Diego County. Chula Vista was kind of like just not completely hiding it at all, which I was like, oh, wow, okay. I guess that their own...
So again, it goes back to just doing your due diligence, getting the right information. So if you're thinking of doing anything like that, Airbnb and stuff, do your due diligence. There's great apps out there that will give you this information. They'll tell you, what's the average rent in a certain location, zip code, if you want to go that precise, right? Yeah. It'll give you 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom count. Like, it's very detailed, and it's AirDNA, which is a great site to go in there.
Yes.
I know you mentioned
I just went on there earlier. It was super easy. It gives you all the information. You type in the city or whatever you want.
It is a subscription. Yeah. They say that there's a free version.
If you want to buy it, if you want to access like the premium data, you got to buy it.
But even the AirDNA was mixed in this conversation too. And some of the articles I read were like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't all true. It depends on how you're pulling that data and how you're interpreting it. So there's a part of that where I can't say one is right and one is wrong, but maybe there is some part of both that are true, but the interpretation of that changes people's opinion on what's happening here. When ultimately from my own chair, this to me is the argument of supply and demand. It really is. Like, there's been an increase of supply of Airbnb. There's been a lot more of them that come on board in the last 2-3 years than there were prior to that. I mean, look, maybe I'm overstating it. A lot of people did not even know what Airbnb or VRBO was until 3 years ago.
I can't even pronounce it.
Verbal, right? That's number one. Number two is demand. So where there's demand for travel, that's considered in our economy discretionary spending. That's not like normal staples of food, water, clothing, shelter, that kind of stuff. So it is a discretionary thing where you're rolling the dice a little bit on how people are going to spend their money. And I mean, one article here was referencing like, Carnival Cruise Lines is expecting greater sales. That's cruise lines. It's not even the same thing. But the consensus is that travel, ladies and gentlemen. The consensus is travel's back is the argument. So even then, even if travel is back to where it was pre-pandemic, then it still comes down to demand. But then these Airbnbs are really essentially competing with one another.
Yeah. Honestly, it's hard to compete 2022, 2021.
Yeah.
It's just hard. Those were the best couple of years that we've seen in a decade.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And maybe longer when we look back.
Exactly. Even longer if we look back. It was a very prosperous years for many of us. So I would say X out those 2 years and then really compare the data to prior to so that
smart.
You really
2019.
get 18, 17. You could really start comparing to all that stuff. You know what I mean? And so all that stuff will actually change the idea if that's something you want to pursue or not.
And I'll tell you guys something I thought about reading this and even in preparation for today's show. I was thinking about, we've been talking about buyers a lot here in our last several episodes and how we have buyers that are winning against other buyers and we're getting escrows in and they're getting their homes. And then there's some where we're back out on the street with our buyers because they did not get their offers selected. So if there is more homes that come on the market because of this, then that's going to help our buyers. So the translation for me in this to kind of bring it all together is if this does happen, number one, I don't think a collapse is a correct definition or explanation. Number two, it will bring houses on the market, which may be easing some of our supply issue, but that's only going to help us help more buyers, which that I would be excited for.
That's an excellent point. I mean, it's just like anything, right? We have homeowners who, when we qualified, they're able and capable of making that mortgage payment.
Yeah, right.
But if they get laid off, how do you control that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're Airbnb and the rental is saturated because it is becoming a little saturated in some areas, then that's where you start seeing those $59 a night, and maybe at that point in time, Airbnb is going to also, the founders of that, they're not the founders, but whoever's running it, they're going to try to get these people out, right?
It's funny that you
you're not
mentioned
doing
that.
It right.
It's funny that you mentioned that they actually enforced this new type of smart pricing. So when there's too much competition, they're going to basically adjust the prices to whatever the market is so that it's competitive enough for people to still be
there. You go.
Because I heard hotels are back on the rise.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. Like, I have a couple of friends that own several of these Airbnbs.
Yeah.
But what they try to do is they try to always improve not only themselves, but they're improving the property.
Right.
Yeah.
How do they doing that? Like maybe add a spa to it or a movie theater there. You know, a lot of times, I know I've got an Airbnb. We all know. We've all probably been in one. And just to know that it has a theater or even a pickleball court, like my dad's house, right?
That's cool.
Like people will be like, I'll rather pay extra and go there.
Right.
One of the things I feel like
if
you're able to set yourself up and set the experience right, it's almost like, well, I rather pay a little bit more to experience this than go to a hotel, right?
Yeah.
But on the contrary to that, if certain Airbnbs aren't kept up to date, they aren't keeping them nicely, they aren't as cleanly, you probably want to be like, well, I'd rather go to a hotel that has a consistent experience and I know it's going to be, ready to go. And
well, here's the thing, and you have a kid, another one coming. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, this guy's just one kid. Let's get the other. Good job.
Out of the way.
But you go to a hotel, you have to rent another room for if you want to bring a traveling nanny or bring your mom. And that's normally what we do as Hispanics, right? Hey, mom, vente. Come over here. Let's go. You're babysitter, right? But I'm going to take you on vacation. What's the better way of doing it?
Airbnb.
You see what I'm saying? Like you have a house, you have an extra room, you could wake up, and a lot of times maybe she just doesn't babysit. She'll cook you breakfast and lunch and dinner.
I don't think
it's always convenient to have that, right? And so
I don't think this changes. For me, I don't think this really changes much from the consumer demand side. I think demand's still going to be there because people want to go travel places, they want to see things, and now that they know this is an option, that is a choice a lot of people are still going to make. I think really when it comes down to it is that it's going to be always a personal choice just as much as it is when we talk about buyers selecting to offer a home or not. In the positive outcome case, if some of these homes do come to the market, great. Then maybe we can get some more buyers in there because someone's going to buy that place. Yeah. So someone's still going to go on vacation. Someone's still going to buy the place if it's not an Airbnb anymore and it gets put on the market. So no matter which way the cookie crumbles in this situation, or no matter which way it falls, there's going to be Airbnb still that people are going to go and stay at. There's going to be Airbnbs that get rolled off their portfolio from that investor group, and they're going to hit the market.
Absolutely.
But there will be a buyer for that place, especially in our current climate.
100%.
Yeah. So just like anything, there'll be homes available from that. There'll be homes available from actual people that just lost their jobs. You never know.
Yeah. I would be really interested to see we'll have to come back and watch this in a year or 2 years to see kind of what the tail of the tape was, because if there is some sort of catastrophic bottoming out and the bottom falls out of this whole thing, it wouldn't just be for Airbnb. It would be with real estate. It would be with the other short-term stuff. And it would probably be with travel at large, not just this one company. So, any final thoughts, guys? No, I mean, hey, if you have any questions or anything like that, just reach out to us. You know, and the other thing is we'll make sure to put the information there of where to go, airdna.com, put that useful information. So if you guys are thinking of doing anything like that, the best thing to do is do your research.
Also, I feel like if you feel like you're stuck and you have an Airbnb, or you know somebody that doesn't know what to do with it, definitely reach out, because you could definitely do something with that. Absolutely. Maybe get a different perspective and see what a good exit route for them would be. Awesome, great conversation, guys. Thank you so much for bringing your opinions and perspective today, and to everyone who watches and listens, thank you so much for following the Mortgage Heroes Weekly Podcast. We will see you again next week.
That's right. We'll see ya.